Good afternoon, or I guess possibly good morning, wherever you're listening to this webinar from. And we're happy that you're joining us today for what should be a very interesting webinar. As you can tell by the title today of today's webinar, Hugh Hefner, the Playboy Mansion, and your IRA. Our guest speaker today is going to really dive into what he means by how you can use what Hugh Hefner did when selling the Playboy Mansion to really benefit your IRA accounts and your retirement accounts. So we're very excited today to have a very interesting presentation that should give you a lot to think about, especially kind of when you're thinking of advanced strategies or unique strategies within a self-directed IRA, different things you can do, maybe even not outside of an IRA as well. Today's webinar really is going to be a good one. So if you're listening to us live for the webinar today, I would encourage you, and I'm sure you're going to have questions, please to just type those questions into the chat box on your screen, and we'll make sure we get to those as they come up, or at least at some point during today's presentation. If you're someone who's listening to the recorded version of the webinar today, jot down your questions, my contact information, and Bryan will certainly give his contact information out as well later today, or later in the presentation, for you to reach out to us after the fact. But again, as we go through the presentation today, we encourage as many questions as you have, but just make sure you type them into the chat box on your screen. My name is Scott Maurer. I'm the Director of Business Development for Advanta IRA. I've been teaching classes and working for Advanta for over 11 years now here with Advanta, primarily in the last several years in the role of Business Development Director, teaching classes and helping oversee a great staff who teaches a lot of good educational seminars and webinars to individuals that are located in our offices either in the Tampa Bay or the Atlanta area. Just a quick background on Advanta IRA. We are a self-directed retirement plan administrator. We have clients nationwide. So we have offices physically in the Tampa Bay and Atlanta markets where we do meet with people on a one-on-one, face-to-face basis. But we do work with people all over the country as well. It's not a geographic thing when it comes to retirement accounts. We can work with anyone, whether they're in California, New York, Montana. It doesn't matter. We can work with you. What we do is we really hold self-directed IRA accounts. I'm sure everybody listening to today probably has an idea, if they're not already using a self-directed IRA, at least what they are. But we provide really an exceptional personal customer service experience by appointing every new account holder to an account manager. So anyone who signs up for a new account with us gets a specific account manager who will help them with all aspects of their account. So they're not calling an 800 number and kind of being pushed on to the next available representative. Again, what we believe very strongly here at Advanta is really an education, either educating our clients or prospective clients about what self-directed IRAs are. We'll talk a little bit about that today. Again, most of the presentation today is our guest speaker sharing his knowledge. But we do a lot of live seminars at our offices in Tampa and Atlanta. We do a lot of online webinars like the one you're listening to today. We help to host networking events and are sponsors of other groups and other organizations as well, because we really feel it's empowering to an individual to become very well educated on self-directed IRAs and really know what it is that you're getting into. So we dedicate a lot of our time at Advanta to providing these quality educational experiences. We have a lot of information on demand in our Learning Center and also on our YouTube page as well. And we have a blog for people to visit. Again, our job is to really educate someone so when they go to make an investment in their self-directed IRA, they've done the research, they've taken the classes, and they feel comfortable about making the particular investment. So individuals who haven't heard of a self-directed IRA, why is that the case? I think for the most part, individuals who haven't heard of a self-directed IRA, it's because they have their money with a bank or a brokerage firm who's offering them limited investment products. A Schwab or a Fidelity isn't a business of selling mutual funds and stocks. They're not interested in holding real estate. They're not interested in holding other types of assets that simply don't fit within their particular portfolio or their profiles for their investors. But IRS regulations do allow for a very broad range of investments, and what we deal with a lot at Advanta, what we're going to be talking about today, is individuals investing in the real estate space, whether it's investing in a rental property or rehab project, investing in notes and mortgages. You can do that within your IRA account. You just have to have the right custodian who's willing to hold that account. That's exactly what we do at Advanta IRA, is to hold your retirement account, hold your IRA, your old 401k, and then you tell us what it is that you want to invest in, not being limited by what we sell, because frankly we don't sell anything at Advanta. We simply provide a service for your self-directed IRA and for your account. Now, the types of accounts that could be self-directed, any type of IRA, whether it's a traditional or a rollover IRA account, a Roth IRA account, a simple or a SEP if you're self-employed or if you own a small business, a SEP and a simple IRA can allow you to make much larger contributions. We also offer individual 401ks, education, and health savings accounts as well. Now, to help kind of establish a little bit what Bryan's going to be talking about in a few minutes, I wanted just to touch on two main types of IRAs that we'll be discussing in today's webinar to make sure everyone is on the same page, and that's the traditional and the Roth IRA account. Now, very simple with a traditional IRA, the benefits of a traditional IRA is that when you make your contributions annually, you have your annual contribution limits, you make those contributions to a traditional IRA, you get a tax deduction, which will lower your current tax bill. But the money in that traditional IRA is then going to grow tax deferred, meaning as you sell and buy and make different investments within that account, you don't pay taxes each step of the way. It allows you to compound your money more quickly. But with a traditional IRA, when you do reach retirement age and you begin pulling money out at that time, you are then taxed at ordinary income rates at whatever your retirement tax bracket may be. So the traditional IRA, you're getting the benefit of getting a deduction up front, but you will have to pay taxes down the line. And also, any former 401k, a 403b plan can also be rolled into a traditional IRA with no tax consequence. Now, the other IRA, though, that we're going to touch on is a much more powerful tool, and that is the Roth IRA account. Again, I'm not sure how many people on the call have a Roth or are familiar with a Roth, but a Roth works very much the inverse of a traditional IRA, in that when you make contributions to a Roth IRA, you do not get a tax deduction up front. That's the one downside of the Roth, is simply just not getting that tax deduction up front. But the huge benefit that the Roth IRA has is that the money that are invested, and again, when you buy and sell assets within a Roth IRA account, you do not pay taxes as you go along, so your money is compounding more quickly. And the huge added benefit with a Roth is that when you pull money out in retirement from a Roth IRA account, once you're over the age of 59 and a half, you've had an account for at least 5 years, that money comes out of the Roth IRA completely tax-free to you. So you do not have to worry about the monies that are growing in your Roth account. You're never going to pay taxes on that money again. So when you make smart investments, you have good returns within the account, you really have that huge added benefit of knowing that money is growing completely tax-free. That's going to be a big focus of what Bryan talks about here in just a few minutes. As far as moving money around, you can transfer money. If you don't have a self-directed IRA yet, it's easy to get started. You can transfer or do a direct rollover of money from either an existing IRA, like I said, an old 401k, an old 403b plan. We certainly help to get you started, get that process taken care of, so there's no tax consequences at all when you move money between those types of an account. So if you have an IRA at Schwab and you want to move some of that cash to Advana, it's a very simple trustee-to-trustee process, no taxes due whatsoever on moving that money over. The important thing to note in that kind of that black bar at the bottom of the slide, earnings within an IRA, whether it's a Roth or a traditional, there is no limitation on how much you can earn within your IRA. And especially when you talk about a Roth IRA, there's no limit on how much you can earn, and also knowing that those earnings are going to be completely tax-free. I mentioned there's a lot of different types of assets, and we're certainly not going to go through all of those today. Again, a lot of what we see at Advana is focused in the real estate realm, whether it's investors purchasing actual property, whether it's commercial real estate, it's a rehab, it's a flip, it's a residential property, it's a condo or a duplex. If it has a deed, your IRA can own the property. Now, there's certain things you can't do with that property, but check back with us on another webinar for more information on that. Today we're going to be talking strictly about kind of investment real estate and different creative ways to structure that, a particular real estate deal. In addition to rental properties, rehabs, etc., we also see individuals invest in real estate by buying notes, whether you're investing in a mortgage loan, a tax lien, an unsecured note. We've had a few guests on some of our webinars talk about note buying, and we have another one coming up in a few weeks as well to make sure you check back on. But you can certainly hold these types of assets within your IRA account as well. So there's a lot of different things you can do within a self-directed IRA, and we do a lot of great webinars and seminars that talk about that. But today's webinar is a special one, as we have a guest on today, Bryan Ellis, who is a self-directed IRA expert, and he's going to share with us today kind of a very creative and unique structure for investing into real estate using both a traditional and Roth IRA, and tease it just a little bit as well in talking about how it relates to Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Mansion. So Bryan, how are you doing today?
I am doing very well. Scott, how are you, sir?
Very good. Well, Bryan, I'm going to turn it over to you. And again, I would encourage anyone who's listening, watching the webinar, you have questions, please type those into the chat box on your screen. We'll make sure we get those questions answered. But at this point, Bryan, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Scott. Is my screen visible the way it should be, Scott? Does it look right to you?
It looks perfect.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bryan Ellis. I am the CEO of the Self-Directed Investor Society. I'm the host of a podcast, and we used to do a lot of radio too. We might be doing some more of that here in the future as well. I have a lot of resources that we have created that are designed to help self-directed investors who use IRAs, 401ks, and even outside of the retirement account context. Today we're going to be talking about something that is very unique, very special, very powerful. Scott just gave you a very effective and concise description of the distinction between traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. And just as laying the groundwork here, I'm probably going to default to saying IRAs today. But for those of you who use solo 401ks, you should be aware that everything I say today works for the solo 401k exactly as well, and in many cases actually better than what I'm going to describe today. But everything we talk about today is going to be from the IRA context. So if I say that, it means both. So the hourglass technique, wouldn't it be great to get tax deductions on the front end for your investments and pay no taxes on the back end? In other words, get the benefit of a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA at the same time. Well, that's kind of a big deal. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So with that in mind, that's me. I am Bryan Ellis. Again, I'm the CEO of the Self-Directed Investor Society over at self-directed.org. Now, we are not a custodian or an administrator like Advanta. Advanta does a great job. You're in an excellent place and in very, very good hands, particularly for the kind of strategy that we're talking about today, because I know these guys can accommodate what I'm going to share with you. Don't let me speak on their behalf. It's always their choice, but I suspect, knowing what they're capable of, that this would be something that they could pull off. So, like I said, we're not a custodian. We're not administrators. Rather, what we do is we help serious self-directed investors get the most out of their accounts in ways that really nobody else can. Our goal is to help you see your self-directed IRA or 401k as much more than just a way to invest in real estate or notes rather than stocks. It is that. It is a great way to get access to alternative investments. But we want you to see it as the truly astounding and powerful wealth multiplication tool that it really is. And it goes far beyond just investing in alternative assets. You see, a lot of people teach how to buy real estate and alternative assets and IRAs, and that's great. We kind of tend to leave the basics to other folks, and that's fine. It's our job to do much more than that, to take you to the next level in astounding ways. And I certainly encourage you to stop by self-directed.org to learn more and to see why. I'm proud to say that my expertise is sufficiently well regarded that I'm frequently published in such highly respected publications as Forbes. In fact, my latest self-directed IRA or article about self-directed IRAs in Forbes was published this past Friday, 3 or 4 days ago, whatever that is. I also have a lot of work in Entrepreneur, TheStreet.com, Business.com, Think Realty, and I hold kind of a unique distinction in that I provide continuing education to lawyers about self-directed IRAs through an organization called CEB. That's part of UCLA, the 15th ranked law school in America. I help them teach law about self-directed IRAs to lawyers. I'm also a host of the Self-Directed Investor Talk podcast, the #1 podcast in America for affluent self-directed investors. My show is syndicated on every big platform, including iTunes and iHeartRadio and Stitcher and Google Play and TuneIn, and of course at self-directed.org. So I do have a deal to propose to you before we get started here, ladies and gentlemen. The deal is this. If you like what you hear today, like if at the end of this presentation you're going, wow, that's pretty cool, That's kind of the standard I want. I don't want you to just think, that was interesting. But if at the end of our time together you're going, wow, that was pretty cool, then do me a favor and stop by and take a listen to the podcast. If you make that deal with me, I guarantee you I'm going to make today's presentation something that really wows you, all right? Now, there's no way we are going to have time to go as deeply into this discussion as I would like, just because it could easily take many, many hours. So to make sure you get all the information, if you stay until the end with me today, and that'll be 30, 40 minutes from now, not long, I'll tell you how to download a free copy of one of my most popular works, The Definitive Guide to Self-Directed IRA. So hang on with me to the end, and I'll tell you how to get that free. Now, I do have extensive knowledge. This is one of those things that those legal disclaimers that we all hate, but I got to do it. I have extensive knowledge of self-directed IRA, solo 401ks, and the statutory, regulatory, and case law behind them. I'm extremely well suited to performing substantive legal analysis of strategies and techniques for use with self-directed IRAs and solo 401ks, but I am not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. I'm not giving you legal advice. If you will give me the respect of understanding that I'm not rendering legal advice, I'll give you the respect of treating you to some rather advanced strategy, because, my friends, you have never heard what you're about to learn, period. And the final bit of legal mumbo-jumbo, this is the property of SDI IP Trust, copyright 2017. We own it, don't record it, broadcast it, distribute it, etc. Okay, that's it. So today, my friends, we're going to talk about real estate investing through your IRA or 401k, but we will skip past the basics. You likely already know that you can buy and sell real estate through your IRA or 401k and reap the associated tax benefits of the type of account that you're using, either the traditional or the Roth account. So we will skip past that and move forward to making the following assumption. Follow me along here for a moment. That assumption is you've done it. Congratulations. You found the perfect real estate investment. It's worth, we'll make the numbers easy. It's worth $200,000. And you're getting it for only $100,000. So, congratulations. You really hit a home run here. So the price is right. It's the right value. The cash flow is strong. The location's desirable. It's exactly right in every way. And you know one thing for sure. This will make a great addition to your self-directed IRA there at Advanta. So the great news is this. You've got the money to do this deal in your traditional IRA right now. You've got the $100,000 it's going to take to buy this thing in your traditional IRA. So you're inclined to just do it there. Leave the money there in your traditional IRA and do it right there. But maybe, just maybe, the fact that you're getting such a great deal on this property could justify converting the money to a Roth IRA so that you can take a huge tax-free capital gain later on. Now, if you don't know what that means, converting from traditional to Roth, it's really simple. It just means you move the money from one account to the other, and you do have to pay taxes on it because you're moving from a pre-tax to a post-tax account. That's the size of it. But in this case, because there's so much profit to be had, you really have to consider seriously maybe it's worthwhile to do that. What to do. The stakes really are high in a situation like this. There's a lot of profit to be had in this deal. One way or the other, you will pay taxes on this money, whether it's by way of a Roth conversion now or by way of income taxes if you, whenever you make withdrawals during retirement, if you leave the money in your traditional IRA. So one way or the other, there is a tax reckoning coming. Really, the question is, what size will it be? So historically, this kind of situation where you are purchasing a piece of real estate, it's an either-or type of choice. You'll be placing title to the new investment property into your traditional IRA or into your Roth IRA. And look, both have their upsides. Obviously, with the traditional IRA, you've already gotten a nice tax break when you put money into the account, and you won't have to pay any taxes on this deal at all until you make withdrawals during retirement. And that's nice. But remember, this property that you're going to buy for $100,000, it's already worth $200,000 right now. You're getting a great deal. And if it's worth $300,000 by the time you retire, which is entirely plausible, and your effective tax rate is a very conservative 30%, well, folks, you're looking at a tax bill of $90,000 in the future whenever you sell that thing and take the money out. Well, the Roth, on the other hand, that would totally eliminate that $90,000 tax bill in the future, and that is a big deal. But to make that work, you will need to convert or transfer 100 grand, the purchase price of the property, from your traditional IRA to your Roth IRA. And again, assuming that you have about a very conservative 30% net income tax rate, that means you'd have to pay about $30,000 right now if you want to transfer the money to your Roth and do it over there. What stinks, I think, is that you have to choose. I mean, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if you could do both? Wouldn't it be just amazing if, and that little bubble fella right there, that represents you. I'm sure you have a lot more expression and better skin tone and look a lot better than that, so I apologize. But that represents you. So wouldn't it be great if you could put your retirement savings into a traditional IRA or 401k, which means, of course, a nice present-day tax break for you, and then apply some sort of crazy magical strategy, which in a way that's far more legally reliable than merely saying alakazam, would result in your assets ultimately ending up in a Roth account, which you could then withdraw from tax-free during retirement. Wouldn't that totally be the bomb? Well, the question is, can it be done? It's a pretty tall order. Now, I don't know about you, but I love the what-if question. What if it could be done? Let that sink into your mind for just a little while, folks, while I tell you a quick story about a recent history-making real estate deal. This fellow, his name is Hugh Hefner. You may have heard of him. For the last 45 years, Hefner he's somehow managed to survive. He's toughed it out. He's just been very strong and managed to make it, despite having to live in this tiny little shack known as the Playboy Mansion. Hey, have you ever been to the Playboy Mansion? I have. I went there for a party back in my younger, crazier days, something I would never do again. But I know a lot of you folks are in Atlanta because Advanta has an Atlanta office. So if ever I have the pleasure of meeting you face-to-face, either here or anywhere throughout the country, come up to me and say, I was on that webinar with you that you did for Advanta. Tell me the Pauly Shore story. Because when I went to the Playboy Mansion, that crazy comedian from the 90s, Pauly Shore, showed up, along with a lot of other very famous people. And what that guy did has had me laughing ever since. And he will never remember it. But he's had me laughing ever since. And I'll be happy to tell you if I ever get the chance to see you in person. So ask me about that. Moving right along. So as you know, Hefner, he's getting on up in age. And he decided to sell the Playboy Mansion. And about a year ago, that's exactly what he did. And in fact, that deal closed a little over a year ago, and Hef got a whopping $100 million for that property. He was asking $200 million, which everybody seemed to think was totally unrealistic anyway. But you can't blame a guy for asking for $200 million, you know? But still, that was large enough to make it the highest, largest home sale price ever recorded in Los Angeles County. No small feat, to be sure. So poor old Hef got only half of what he wanted, but I'm thinking somehow he will survive. Now, the Playboy Mansion was bought by a fellow named Darren Metropolis. He is the heir to and co-owner of the company called Hostess. You know, they make Twinkies. Now, Darren, he is... in this photo, he's trying to look nice and respectable, standing in the law library and such. Darren is a famous partier himself. He a little bit crazy, a little bit wild, but he's very, very wealthy now as the heir to Hostess. He already owns the property next door to the Playboy Mansion, and really all he wants is to get the Playboy Mansion to complete the parcel of land that he wants for his own. So he's really had to suffer through life only owning the property next door until recently. So poor guy, right? But here's the thing. Here we are more than a year after the transaction closed where Darren bought that property from Hef, and something weird is happening. What's happening is that Hef still lives in the Playboy Mansion. And look, this deal has closed. He's gotten the money. It is a done deal. But the famous 91-year-old still lives in the Playboy Mansion. So the operative question is how? How is he pulling off such a huge diversion from normal practice? Well, it turns out, folks, that what he's doing isn't really all that unusual. Let's talk about real estate transactions very briefly. Most real estate deals are executed what's called a general warranty deed. Now, the name might be slightly different in your area, but the point remains the same. With this kind of a deed, what's happening is that the old owner is giving the new owner absolute ownership. He's giving the new owner something that's technically called fee simple title. Now, that's just a fancy legal term for absolute ownership. In other words, in a typical real estate deal, the buyer becomes owner of the real estate in every possible respect. Nothing is withheld, period. But that is not the only way that real estate transactions can be done. In fact, there are many, many ways that property can be conveyed. We will not be going into all those options, but we will focus on the one relevant one for today, what Hef used, and interestingly, what you and I can use, but in a totally different way. So here's what Hef did. Instead of using a normal deed that would transfer absolute ownership of the Playboy Mansion, Hef essentially just split the deed into a couple of pieces. Now, part of it he kept for himself. The part he reserved for himself gives him a very interesting right. It allows Hefner to continue to be the owner of and therefore continue to live in the Playboy Mansion for the rest of his life. Yes, you heard that correctly. The guy gets to live there until he dies. What a coup for him. Now, it turns out that this sort of thing isn't terribly uncommon. It's used in estate planning as a regular matter of course. The fancy legal name for this type of real estate ownership is known as a life estate. Again, just means Hef owns the property the rest of his life. And for the sake of simplicity, we'll call this the present value part of the property. And just so you know, this isn't an inherently morbid thing. Hef could just as easily stipulated that he wanted to maintain control of the Playboy Mansion for X number of years rather than for the rest of his life. But this way, he knows he's covered regardless. Now, the rest of the ownership of the property, in other words, ownership after Hef has gone, well, that's what's called, and that's what Darren Metropolis bought, and that's what's called a remainder interest. A remainder interest. In other words, once Hef's rights to the property ends, Darren gets what's left thereafter. And again, for simplicity, we'll call this the future value part of the property. Now, at this point, some of the more astute among you have a highly technical question that's bubbling up in your head, and that question is, so what? I'll bet you thought we were here to talk about some fancy real estate IRA strategy, huh? Not to discuss the inner workings of the deal to sell the Playboy Mansion. Well, my friends, we are doing both. But before I give you the connection, I'd like to share one more little thing with you about the Playboy Mansion deal, and this will help us to tie all of this back to what you're here to learn. You can kind of think of this kind of real estate deal as an hourglass, where the sand at the top represents the present value of the property, and that's the part that Hef owns. And the sand at the bottom represents the future value of the property. That's the part that Darren owns. But why, pray tell, would Darren be willing to do this? Why would he let Hef continue to live in that property? Well, and this is a little bit morbid, so my apologies, but Darren and Hef both know that Hef's expected remaining lifespan looks less like this hourglass that you see right here, which is full nearly to the top with remaining time, and more like this hourglass where practically all the time has already passed. Darren knows that the moment Hef's hourglass looks like that, with all of Hef's time now in the past, then something will happen for Darren, which is that he'll no longer own just the remainder interest, but now he'll own absolute 100% total ownership of the Playboy Mansion. You see, with each passing day, this is important, with each passing day, the present value of what Hef owns, the life estate in the Playboy Mansion, with each passing day, that part declines in value. And with each passing day, the future value of the Playboy Mansion, the part that Darren owns, well, that part goes up in value every day until at some point Darren owns it all totally 100%. Now, he's willing to place a valuation of $100 million on the future value of the Playboy Mansion because for him, that future value is going to be realized very soon. But if instead of Hef being 91 years old, if instead he was an infant or a young boy, the valuation will look very different. Instead, it would probably look a lot more like, if this is what it looked like, the present value would be, for example, maybe $85 million. That's Hef's part, because Hef would have a whole lifetime ahead of him if he's only an infant, while the future would be worth only $15 million. Because even though the Playboy Mansion is going to be worth a lot in the future, still the future is a long time away. But as time passes, each and every day, the valuation of the present and future values change. And at life's midpoint, maybe the valuations are $55 million for the present value and $45 million for the future value. And then at an age much closer to the end of life, maybe those valuations have shifted to $10 million and $90 million respectively. Here's the point. Put up a piece of real estate into present and future value. The total value of the real estate does not change, but the value of the individual pieces changes dramatically over time with each and every passing day. So what does this have to do with investing in real estate in your IRA? In a word, everything. Gosh, absolutely everything. This is huge. Here's why. What if you could structure your real estate investment so that your traditional IRA buys the present value part of your deals, and your Roth IRA buys the future value part of your deals? In other words, buy the expensive part of a transaction, the present value. Well, properly structured. You buy that using already deducted money, but have that value transferred automatically as a function of time to your Roth account because it owns the remainder interest. Here's what that would look like. So remember in our example, you found a great property that's worth $200,000, and you can buy it for $100,000. You've got the $100,000 in your traditional IRA, so that using the hourglass technique, you might structure the deed. This is step one. Structure the deed so that it is in two pieces. First, the present value part. That's worth about 85% of the value of the property. And I'm using 85 and 15 just as numbers I pulled out of the air. As you'll see in just a minute, we can make those numbers whatever we want. There are some variables that have to be contended with, but that's okay. So the present value part, that's worth about 85% of the value of the property. And the second piece that you're going to divide the deed into is the future value part, worth 15%. Now, if you don't understand how you can do this, divide the deed into different valuations, you don't have to. I haven't explained to you how you can do it, so you shouldn't understand it. But this is what you need to understand. All you need to do is work with an attorney who understands this type of deed and tell them what valuations that you are trying to accomplish, establish, and it's a simple thing to have them do. Just let them do their job. Now you have the deed in two pieces, one worth 85% of the price and the other worth 15%. So then what you do is you pay $85,000 from your traditional IRA to acquire the present value of the real estate. All right? The present value of the real estate. And remember, that $85,000 is money that you've already taken a tax deduction for. So that's great. And you do that in your traditional account, all right? So step three is you've got to pay for that other $15,000. What you want to do is have that remainder portion, the future value portion, end up in your Roth account. And your Roth account, in our example, doesn't have any money in it. So what you need to do is transfer just enough, $15,000, from your traditional IRA to your Roth IRA, so that your Roth can buy that future value deed. Does this mean you're going to take a tax hit? Yes, it does. Remember when you were thinking about converting the entire $100,000 from traditional to Roth, but you didn't do so because of an effective tax rate of, say, 30% would have yielded you a $30,000 tax bill? Well, guess what? It's nothing like that this time. Instead, the value of the future interest in that real estate is only $15,000. It's going to grow a lot. It's only $15,000 right now. So your tax hit this time will be a relatively tiny $4,500. So follow me along here. Step 4. Now all you do is use the $15,000 in your Roth IRA to buy the future value of the property, the future value part of the deed. And from here, it's brainlessly simple because all you do is do everything as normal. Let time pass. You want to rent it out? Rent it out. No problem. Want to sell it? Sell it. Doesn't matter. Want to hold on to it forever? Fine. Do that too. Because what you'll see is that with each passing day, something interesting is happening. The present value of the property is declining with every single passing day, and the future value of the property is increasing with every single passing day, which means in turn that with each passing day, value is being transferred out of your traditional IRA and into your Roth IRA. Your wealth is transferring totally automatically from a totally taxable environment to a totally tax-free environment. And if you wait long enough, you'll actually be able to take your profits from this deal 100% tax-free. But if you choose not to hold the property until the expiration of the present value, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter at all, because you still get great benefits. Because remember, value is passing from your traditional account to your Roth on a daily basis. So with each passing day, each passing year, more and more of the asset's value is in your Roth rather than your traditional. So guess what? If you choose to sell the property at any given time, regardless of when, every passing year means that your tax-free Roth is growing in size automatically, and your taxable traditional is shrinking in size automatically without you adding another penny to any of your accounts. My friends, that is awesome. That is having your cake and eating it too. And that is what I call the hourglass technique. And you know, the great thing about this is that there's no guesswork involved. If you're a legally and tax-astute investor, there might be some questions in your mind. Like you might be thinking, well, this could be a problem because it's not good for the traditional and the Roth to partner together. Folks, they're not partnering together. That's the beautiful thing. Anybody can buy the present value portion or the future value portions independently. There's absolutely zero need for these two pieces to be both purchased together by your two IRAs to make it work. If that was necessary, you'd have a problem. But that's not the case. As the Playboy Mansion deal shows, it's totally kosher for different parties to own the present value and future value because they are independent, unique investments. You might also be concerned about how to properly value the two sides of the deal. And you know what? You should be concerned about that. Fortunately, the IRS publishes some tables that give us some really great guidance on how to do those valuations. So there's really not a lot of guesswork involved in using this particular strategy. So how do you make this happen for you? How do you apply this strategy to your account? Well, let me encourage you in this way, folks. Don't think of this as a do-it-yourself type of strategy. This is an advanced technique. So if you'd like to do this, there are two paths you can take. Number one, if you are already a member of my Self-Directed Investor Society, all you have to do is drop me an email there to feedback@selfdirected.org, and I'll hook you up with Tim Berry, the #1 IRA attorney in America, and our tax counsel at SDI Society to get you all set up. And number two, if you're not a member of SDI Society, then either reach out to your own attorney and have them do the research necessary to figure this out, or probably easier and much cheaper, you can also reach out to me, and I'll be happy to talk to you about getting you involved in the Self-Directed Investor Society. But folks, here's what I want to leave you with. You have a wonderful self-directed IRA provider in Advanta. You've made an excellent choice. I like Advanta and what they're doing. I particularly like Scott, and I like Mike Ventry. They're at Advanta and how these guys serve their clients. They are excellent at setting up the right account for you and serving you and making sure that things are done in the right way for you. And if you choose to benefit from membership in the Self-Directed Investor Society, you'd be part of a group who learns astoundingly powerful content like you just experienced. You learn that kind of stuff every single month. You'll learn, as I said in the beginning, and as I just demonstrated, how to use your self-directed IRA or solo 401k as much, much more than just a way to invest in alternative assets. What you've just seen is next level ninja stuff. When I taught this seminar, where a famous IRA attorney named John Heyer, probably a lot of you know John. John was attending my seminar as a student. And when I taught this, his mouth kind of dropped open and immediately told me that he planned to mercilessly rip off this strategy from me. Well, that won't really happen, but what we do is to help you to create results like this, but without you having to learn the foreign language of attorneys. So, my friends, I do have a question for you. My question is, did I deliver for you during this presentation? Do you are you sitting in your seat going, that's pretty interesting? If so, I am going to take this time to remind you respectfully that you and I have an agreement, and that agreement is that you would check out my podcast, Self-Directed Investor Talk, where we discuss these types of issues every day, 5 days a week. Again, you can listen in on any of those syndication providers, and of course, self-directed.org. And also, I made a promise to you, and that is to give you a free copy of my resource called the Definitive Guide to Self-Directed IRAs. So I'm going to keep that promise too. So to get access to that for free, just drop me an email to feedback@selfdirected.org, and I will be happy to send that over. Folks, thanks for listening in today. I hope that you have learned a lot. And Scott, that's all I have for you today.
Thanks, Brian. I did want to. There was Brian. There was at times you were going in and out on some of the static. We could kind of make out what you were saying, but we did have some little bit of static issues. But just to reiterate that last part that Brian just mentioned, if you want to get a copy of this guide, just email him at feedback@selfdirected.org, or you can also obviously look into joining his society. But Brian, a great presentation. We did have a few questions that came up during the class, and hopefully we can get some answers to these. And if anyone has questions as we're wrapping up here too, please get them typed in. One individual asked what the expiration is, or if you could explain what the expiration is of the present value.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
with Hef, obviously, it's him passing and dying, but how else can the present value expire?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer to that is it is completely up to you. There are a lot of ways that it could be done, Scott. Someone buying a property might choose to make the present value expire on the basis of their own life. They might choose somebody else's life. They might choose a specific term of years. There is an astounding degree of flexibility available for making that choice, and that's why I was mentioning that you really just need to tell your attorney what kind of valuation splits that you want to achieve. So, for example, the present value being worth 85%, and the future value being worth 15%. That's pretty easy to accomplish based just on choosing either the right amount of time or the right person based on their age. So it's really completely up to the individual investor when it expires.
Okay. Yeah, again, you're crackling just a little bit. Yeah, but it can, obviously, again, for those of you who are listening, it can be a number of terms. Could be you could a number of years. You could tie it to someone else's life. Could tie it to your life, etc. The other, I guess, the person had another follow-up question too. Can you invest in property overseas? And I don't know if maybe the issue here would be the value, making sure that countries recognize life estates and remainder interests before doing something like this overseas.
Yeah, you're right, Scott. That's the issue is, does that foreign country recognize this? If they do, I imagine you could do it. But
okay.
That's a function of the local law.
Another question, and I think this probably sums up what you were saying, Brian, but I think the question was maybe they're somewhat, I don't know if incredulous or kind of astounded a little bit, but so basically as the value of the property moves from the traditional to Roth, there is zero tax due on the money. That is basically, I guess, the value that is removed from the traditional IRA. Is that right?
I mean, if you want to pay taxes, I guess we'll take it.
Yeah, sure. But that's the synopsis. Essentially, it's basically a legal way to structure a conversion from a traditional to a Roth IRA without having to pay all those taxes, because you're having the traditional IRA by one particular. And I mentioned at the beginning, I'm an attorney. We were taught in law school that property is a bundle of sticks, the different kind of rights and values you have. So you're basically having your traditional IRA buy one bundle and having your Roth buy the other. And over time, the Roth will eventually own all of the bundle, if you let it go long enough, all the sticks.
That's right. And, Scott, I do see another question there. Could this technique be used to purchase things other than real estate, such as a note? The really interesting thing is this can be used to purchase absolutely anything. It's a little bit cleaner in real estate because it's a well-established sort of thing that a lot of attorneys know how to do. But the reality is this type of interest, a life estate and a remainder interest, can be applied to basically any type of asset so long as it's properly documented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's fantastic. Yeah, if you can use it for things other than real estate, I think the key thing for someone looking to do that, just make sure you have an attorney on board who's helping in that, because it's obviously, you said it's one thing to have a life estate and a remainder interest that is well established in the real estate law, but if you're looking to do something else, definitely look into that. Another question that came up that said, can you put your personal residence in this setup and have that inherited by the children? Now I can answer that. So you can't do that with an IRA, because there's some rules there about your personal residence and having your IRA own it. But I think Bryan mentioned at the beginning, using a life estate and remainder interest, while some of us may be new to somebody on the call, it is definitely not a concept that is new to estate planning attorneys who set up this exact scenario for life or for estate planning purposes, not necessarily for the tax structure that Bryan shared with us today, but for estate planning and different reasons. You can certainly do similar things. That's correct, right, Bryan?
Absolutely, no doubt about it.
It's another question. A property owned by the SD IRA owner cannot be used for personal use by the IRA owner. Can you put a set time for the movement of value, say 5 years, so that you can use the property in your retirement? I guess the thing there would be, to answer the question, Bryan, you can chime in as well. I think if you were going to do that, if you have the movement once the property fully moves into the Roth IRA and you set it up so that everything gets moved, the life estate ends and the remainder interest becomes the present and whole value within the Roth. Once the full value of the property is in your Roth, you can simply take a distribution of the property out of your Roth to then live in the property. But as long as it remains inside the Roth IRA or either IRA has an interest, you can't live in the property.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. You just got to stay far away from any personal usage of any assets. And that's rule number one.
Yep. And someone said, why would the Playboy Mansion not be considered a residence? He lives there. It's true, and I think what make sure we understand as part of the presentation, Bryan was using how Hef structured the sale of the property to how you could buy investment property, but Hef was not using his IRA accounts, at least to my knowledge. Bryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. He wasn't using his IRAs when he sold the property, but Bryan was using the example of how he sold the property and dividing it into two different basically transactions, or two different parcels, a life estate and the remainder interest, to how you can do that with investment property.
Exactly right. It is a residence, but that was just an object lesson. He was not using an IRA at all.
Right. Well, Bryan, I thank you very much for the presentation. I think that is definitely something that gives everybody listening, and certainly the people who will listen to the recorded version as well. We're going to have this obviously for play on our YouTube channel. Go back and listen to it. Give people a lot of food for thought, and definitely bringing something new to the table. That's what we like to do at Advanta IRA, is bring in experts who can share some of strategies like this and get you interested. I would encourage everyone to reach out to Bryan and find out more about other things that he does, other areas that he can advise you, and definitely check out his podcast for other great information. It's something, obviously, at Advanta, we provide a service. We don't always provide you with the techniques or the ideas, and that's why we like to bring guests on like Bryan today to share that with you. So please do reach out to him, especially to take advantage of that offer. Was it feedback@selfdirected.org? Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, well, at this point, we don't have any other questions. Bryan, again, thank you very much. Again, anyone who's listening to the live version, thank you for participating today. If you are listening to the recorded version, you can reach out to me here at this email address and phone number. You can also, again, reach out to Bryan send him an email at feedback@selfdirected.org to get that free download, also to get information on his Self-Directed Society as well, and get all of that information. So, Bryan, thanks again.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, everyone. It's great being with you.
All right, thanks. Bye.